I know in my soul that God will fulfill his promise to me, but that doesn't take away the ache, night after lonely night, the anguish of seeing other people blissfully in love while I am made to wait. The freaking marriage proposals on Instagram, it's pure torture. How do I silence this aching loneliness in my chest? Hello, everyone. Welcome back to 828 with Cait. I'm your host, Cait Taylor. And if you've never clicked on this podcast before, 828 with Cait is a faith-based podcast that was initially inspired by my favorite Bible verse, which is Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. And boy, is today's message on brand. It's very on theme. If you are a listener of the podcast, you know that I have not talked to you guys for a while. There has been a lot going on in my life. I feel like there's always a lot going on in all of our lives, right? But there has just been kind of a bunch of stuff all at once. Family things, health issues, just a lot of unexpected bumps in the road. But a message has come out of it. I have prepared myself to be very vulnerable today. I have my matcha, and this is very much going to be a girl chat. I don't know if it will be as structured as my messages normally are. I definitely have a whole list of things I want to talk to you guys about and specific encouragements I have for you. But filming this episode is really an act of obedience for me, being this vulnerable about something that can kind of feel like almost embarrassing to talk about. At least that's kind of what it brings up for me, but there's lots of different emotions. Anyway, I just want to have a girl chat with you. I know that there will be so many women who listen to this and can relate, and that's why I'm doing this. So, today I want to talk about when God changes your plans. I don't know about you, but I am a planner. I had a plan for this year that so far is not going to plan. I really thought I would be engaged by now. I'm 29, it's my last year before 30, and I really thought this year I would have a ring on my finger, or at least be getting close. But the further we get into this year, the less and less likely that looks. If you're a single woman in your late 20s, 30s, you know how heavy that can sometimes feel. I personally didn't ever think this would bother me because I have been watching people around me get married for the past 10 years. I started going to church when I was 17, and pretty shortly after that, everyone was getting married. And I was always kind of the opinion or stance of like, rather you than me. I wanted to travel and live my life and just see more of the world. And I did. I've gone and I've done all of those things, which I'm glad about. And I have no regrets as far as how I spent my 20s was how I needed to spend my 20s. Had I got married at 20, 21, when everyone from my church was getting married, I don't know if I would still be married, to be honest with you, or I may be extremely unhappy because I was just not ready for that type of covenant commitment at that age. All of the things I did throughout my 20s have just shaped me and made me the woman that I am today, and I feel now more prepared for marriage than ever. However, I am now also at this age where there's this societal expectation hanging over me. I truly get asked at least twice a week when I am getting married. My family are constantly asking me. If I FaceTime my mom, she automatically thinks that I have some exciting news to share. There is no news. On top of that, I can't even open Instagram without seeing another proposal or someone else from my high school getting married. I think it was one thing when I was seeing all the people from church that I grew up with get married, because it's like, okay, people in church get married young. I was not bothered by that. But now I'm seeing people not in the Christian community, just people I went to high school with who are not believers, and they're all getting married now. And it's like, okay, we've hit the point where everyone is getting married. Sometimes I don't even want to open social media because I know I'm going to see something like that, and some days it's fine. Other days, it's very triggering, and I think it prevents you or makes it harder for you to keep your eyes on your own lane. Focus on your own path. Don't compare yourself to others. Um, and something that men will never ever be able to fully comprehend or understand the weight of that we carry as women is that even once we calm ourselves down, we tell ourselves to keep our eyes fixed on our own lane, don't compare, that is the harsh reality of our biological clock. I admittedly did not hear that clock all throughout my 20s, and all of a sudden, it's getting really, really loud. And I feel forced, actually, to figure it out. And I don't feel ready. I don't even know if I want to have biological children or not. Um, I had a lot of trauma, obviously, in my childhood, if you know my story. Um, Sorry, guys, I didn't actually think I was going to get emotional at this part. Um, but I was also a parentified child. I very much spent my childhood years taking care of the adults in my life, taking care of my younger brother. I don't feel ready to be in a role where I'm again taking care of people. I know it's selfish, but right now I would like to take care of myself, or if I'm married, just be taking care of my husband, but taking care of a child right now feels like it's too much for me. It's beyond my capacity. And I've been praying about this. I've been asking the Lord to change my desires if that's His will for me. But this is all a side note. I'm going on a tangent here. If I do decide to have children, I would like to have a good chunk of time to just enjoy being married first and build that solid foundation. But that available chunk of time, because of my biological clock, is getting smaller and smaller against my will. But you know whose will? This is all still under God's. Isaiah 55:9 says, "As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." Our tiny human pea brains really struggle to grasp the ways of God. How could we? Our plans make so much sense to us that it's very confusing when that plan and God's plan is not matching up. The other weekend, I spent an entire day in bed just sobbing, telling God that I don't understand the things that have happened this year that have derailed my plan. I know that they must be a part of His plan, but I'm upset about it. And for the first time, I really just let myself grieve that. And maybe there's something that you need to grieve too. Was there a deadline you set for yourself that has come and gone? Something you really, really wanted and it has not happened? I need you to know it's okay to cry about it. For a long time, I didn't really cry about things. I would hold in my emotions. And I've realized that it's okay to admit that you're bothered by something. It's okay to admit that you're struggling with societal expectations and pressure and these desires that you have for yourself. It's okay to be upset when life is not going the way that you thought it would. It's okay to grieve that. Even Jesus grieved. When Lazarus died, he had allowed that to happen, knowing that this was the plan that was ultimately going to bring his Father the most glory, and that would strengthen the faith of those close to Lazarus. However, this does not mean that Jesus took the suffering that it caused lightly. Lamentations 3 says, even if he causes grief, he will show compassion according to his abundant loving devotion. For he does not willingly afflict or grieve the sons of men. If you look at the Hebrew, the literal translation is that God does not afflict us from the heart. To do something from the heart means you do it with delight and passion. And sometimes I get comments from you guys saying things like, God is sadistic because he lets all these bad things happen in my life and he's happy that I'm suffering. No. Isaiah 63:9 says, in all their distress, he too was distressed. There is not a tear you have cried that the Lord has enjoyed. Quite the opposite. The Bible says he is bottling your tears. Like a parent, his heart breaks when yours breaks, especially when he has to be the one to break it by not giving you what you thought you wanted when you thought you wanted it. Jesus may have known that Lazarus dying was the plan that would bring about the most good, but he also knew that he would break the hearts of Lazarus's sisters and his friends by letting him die. When Jesus saw them crying, the Bible says he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled, and he wept. So when you are lying in your bed crying, Jesus is crying too, even when he knows the plan, even when he knows that all things will work together for good to those who love God, even when he sees that good that you can't see at the end of this. Jesus knew that Lazarus was about to rise from the dead, but in this messy middle part where you can't understand what he's doing, where you're frustrated, you're confused, you don't understand, he weeps with you. While I was writing this message, I actually got a comment from a listener saying, I know in my soul that God will fulfill his promise to me, but that doesn't take away the ache, night after lonely night, the anguish of seeing other people blissfully in love while I am made to wait. In brackets, I am happy for them. The freaking marriage proposals on Instagram, it's pure torture. So I ask you, Cait, what about the in-between? How do I silence this aching loneliness in my chest? This makes me want to cry because I get it. And I think that's all you can do. I don't think you can silence it. I think in this in-between, you have to feel those feelings. That's what I did the other week with the Lord. On that one day, I felt everything. I grieved it. I wept with him. But then once I had got it all out, I realized that I had been holding so tightly to my version of how I thought this year should go, that I had left no room for his version. I knew I had to start the process of surrendering my will to God's will, trusting that he has a reason behind every delay and every detour. And it made me remember a story that I want to share with you that I think could help reframe how you see this waiting season. Several years ago, I was working as an au pair in Chicago, like a nanny, and I had convinced my boss to let me take a trip to LA for New Year. On one condition, he said I had to be back in time Monday morning to take the kids to school. He very kindly let me take a red-eye flight. I can actually hear a plane going over right now. That's funny. He let me take a red-eye flight from LA that would land me back in Chicago around 5 a.m. So the plan was literally land in O'Hare, drive straight to our house, take the kids to school, and then finally go to bed after being up all night. What I didn't know is that that night was the Golden Globes. So with that on top of holiday traffic, getting into LAX was pandemonium. It was the worst traffic I have ever seen. And I mean, LAX is always crazy. If you've ever flown in or out of there, you know. This was like something I had never seen before. By the time I get to the airport, my gate is closing. I run up to the desk. There's so many people in front of me. I'm asking everyone, hey, do you mind if I go ahead of you? I'm going to miss my flight. I get up to the desk and I tell the lady, this is my flight. Do you think I can get on it? She said, you know what? I'm going to give you your ticket. If you can get through security in the next 5 minutes, I think we can get you on that plane. Like, oh my gosh. So I get my ticket. I run through to security. And when I get to the guy, he is much less helpful than the lady. He basically tells me, because your gate is closed, we can't let you through. So I go all the way back down to the lady at the desk. She tries to talk to security, but by this time, that plane is gone. Thankfully, they managed to get me the last seat on the very last flight to Chicago that night, which was around 1:20 a.m., which was great. But I was going to be late for work. I was not going to make it to take the boys to school in time. When I finally land in Chicago, I am stressed. I'm exhausted. It's been a really long night. I go to see my boss. I'm about to apologize to him. And the first thing he says to me is, thank God you didn't end up on that original flight. I just saw that it was delayed over 13 hours. Now, we don't know exactly what happened. It seems that plane got diverted to another city because it had a technical issue. Either way, that plane did not touch down in Chicago until almost 14 hours after it was supposed to. And that's the flight I thought I wanted to be on. That's the flight I fought to try and get on. Do you see where I'm going with this? There might be a relationship that you think you want to be in. There might be a timeline that you think you have to stick to. You're frustrated and confused by all the delays and detours, not realizing that God saved you from something that you couldn't see. Proverbs 16:9 says, in their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. And thank God he does, because you might be making a plan and the Lord is saying that route is going to have issues. That person is going to get diverted. That thing you're chasing is not going to take you where you want to go. Proverbs 14:12, there is a path before each person that seems right, but it ends in death. You may be trying to board a flight that the Lord is trying to ground. Sometimes we don't see the danger, we just see the delay. In my case, I found out the next day. I could look back and say, wow, thank God that didn't work out. But most of the time, you will probably never find out what you were spared from. I may have never heard about the flight issues, meaning I would have been going about my life thinking I had been delayed, thinking I was late, when actually I had been fast-tracked. The plane I ended up on was the best option to get me where I needed to go as quickly as possible. And maybe that's what this season is for you. You think you're late. You're upset with God. You're telling him, God, I'm so late. I had planned to be married by 28. And God is saying, there wasn't actually an option for you to get married at 28. There wasn't actually an option for me to land in Chicago at 5 a.m. like I planned. The only flight available for me landed after 7 a.m. Did it mean I missed taking the kids to school? Yes, but things worked themselves out in their own way. Maybe your route is age 38, not 28. You can either spend your life fighting to get on a flight that you were never meant to be on, or you can trust what God has ordained for you. I know that's easier said than done, especially for people like me. I am a type A, eldest sister, INFJ. If you have ever done the Myers-Briggs personality test, you know that makes me a planner. And if you're wired that way too, know that God made that part of you. There is nothing wrong with being a planner. In fact, scripture encourages wise planning. Proverbs 21:5 says, "The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance." So God is not anti-planning, but as Dr. Tony Evans says, don't plan like a fool. Leave room for the will of God, because your plan and God's will may not always match. And if you don't make room for divine interruptions, you will stay angry, mad, frustrated, irritated, and exasperated, because life just doesn't always go as you planned. You know, right before COVID hit, that au pair contract was coming to an end, and I was planning my move from Chicago to LA, my first LA move back in 2020. And I'll admit, back then, my motives were all wrong. I was money focused. I saw LA as this opportunity to stop being a nanny and to make money and become an influencer. And as I was planning this move, I happened to read this verse from James chapter 4. Now, listen, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. The contract I was signing for LA was for a year. Why, you do not even know what will happen tomorrow. This was just before the world found out about COVID. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. Otherwise, you are boasting about your own pretentious plans, and all such boasting is evil. I read that and somehow convinced myself it was a coincidence. I ignored God's crystal clear warning, and guess what? Nothing worked out. I moved to LA, it was a crazy year, COVID hit, and ultimately, I ended up back in New Zealand. Yet, here I am, 5 years later, living in LA again. Same city, similar career goal, night and day difference. Why? Because I'm not the same. God took me on a lot of different detours before bringing me back here. Not because he was punishing me, because he was preparing me. He had a lot of work to do on my motives and my character to set me up for success. LA had always been in my heart ever since I was a teenager. I believe the Lord put it there knowing that I would one day end up here. He did not deny me this desire, but he also knew that I was trying to get here before I was ready. You might feel ready to get engaged or married or have a baby. You might feel prepared, but the Lord searches the heart and examines the mind. Jeremiah 17:10. Maybe there are things that he sees that still need pruning in you if you are going to have a successful marriage. Or if not you, maybe it's your spouse. Maybe they're still being refined. And do you really want to jump the gun before God is finished doing what needs to be done? This is the moment where you find out if you truly believe that His ways are higher than your ways. Do you believe that God is a better planner than you? May I remind you that you were made in His image, meaning even your ability to dream and plan is just a reflection, a tiny little glimpse of God's planning skills. Let's be honest, how many things have you planned and prayed for that in hindsight you are so glad that God did not give you? How many doors have you begged Him to open that in His mercy He kept closed? If I'm honest, maybe 30% of what I've asked for has actually been good for me. And even when I've prayed for something good, I've been glad when God didn't deliver it when I asked for it or when I thought that I wanted it. For example, when I was 17, I moved out of home. My mom was not on board with me being a Christian, and I was praying every single day for my mom to get saved. I was estranged from my mom for 4 long months, and every day I prayed that that would be the day that my mom got saved. Well, my mom ended up getting saved at my baptism. On the day that I was baptized, my mom gave her life to the Lord, and she got baptized on the same day as me, April 12th, 2015. It's tattooed on my arm because this is the day that that was meant to happen. I had begged God for it to happen a lot of days before this one. But I'll tell you something. I remember standing in that baptism pool after my mom had just walked up, and in front of everyone, the whole church told them that she wanted to give her life to the Lord. I remember the first thing I thought was, God, I am so sorry that I doubted you. Firstly, I had thought that maybe this wasn't going to happen. And secondly, I realized that God writes much better stories than I do. Of course, it would have been amazing no matter what day my mom got saved, but it wouldn't have been this amazing, amazing story. And maybe God could have let you get married at 28, but it would be nothing like the marriage that He has planned for you at 38. I know I'm using a lot of plain analogies in this message, but I am going to end it with this. I have always had a fear of flying. It's a control issue for me. I don't like that my life is in someone else's hands when I get on that plane, and I have to trust that person to get me from point A to point B. What I tell myself every time I get on a plane is that it would actually be much more dangerous for me to get in the cockpit and start taking over those controls. I don't know how to fly a plane. I don't have the tools, the training, or the perspective, but the pilot does. Me trusting him is always going to be safer than trusting myself. It's the same way with God. So, my answer to the girl who wrote saying, what do I do in the in-between, in the waiting period? What do I do? Cry if you need to, and then surrender. And surrender again and again every time you feel tempted to take over those controls or not to trust in the path, the route that God has ordained for you. Surrendering is actually the most intentional choice you can make because you're saying, God, I still have plans, I still have dreams, but if you will it, I will do this or that. And if you don't, I will trust you anyway, because I know that you see the full sky and I only see the seat in front of me. And maybe this delay, this detour, is God lovingly grounding flights that you were never meant to be on. And if you will surrender up those controls, He will take you exactly where you are meant to be, safely, soundly, and right on time. If this episode was helpful, I would love if you would leave a comment It's really encouraging to read all of your comments and just see that writing these messages and sharing what God puts on my heart is worthwhile in some way. And so I'm just really grateful for all of you who continue to listen. And if it's your first time, thank you for being here. I'm so happy that you somehow found this episode. I pray over every single episode that it would reach exactly who it needs to at exactly the right time. Is just what we've been talking about today. So if you're here, I believe it is for a reason. And I'm so happy whether you watch this one or you subscribe and follow along with the podcast. Thank you for being here today. Until next time, God bless you guys.